My dad publicly called me a drain and said my brother was the only one who mattered. I left that night without a word. A month later, my brother texted, "Why did you stop sending me money?" I replied, "Didn't want to waste it on someone who already had everything." Then I watched them fall apart without me. Hey, I'm Eli, 28 years old, and honestly, I've always been the overlooked sibling. You know, not the golden child or the family favorite, just kind of there. My younger brother, Mason? Oh, he's the superstar, the soccer whiz, the straight A student, basically our parents' pride and joy. Meanwhile, I was the guy fixing his car after a crash, covering his parking tickets so he could still hit up Cancun, and making excuses for his holiday no-shows just to keep things cool at home. They called it being a good older brother, I called it being invisible, with a side of financial aid. I made things easier by moving to Chicago right after college. Landed a gig in IT, and slowly pieced together a comfortable life, a snug studio, a steady paycheck, and peace. But whenever I went home for birthdays or family events, it was like my role was extra in my own family's movie. Conversations always seemed to orbit around Mason, his job successes, his new girlfriend, or his charity run from last fall. Even when I shared my promotion to senior analyst, it barely registered. My mom would give a distracted smile and shift the focus back to Mason, waxing lyrical about his upcoming Dubai trip. Dad? He'd grunt something dismissive about tech jobs, then zone out into the football game. Still, I kept showing up, not because I expected a miracle, but because maybe, just maybe, they'd notice me or at least acknowledge my efforts. I brought gifts every Christmas, pitched in for their mortgage when COVID hit hard, sent Mason money here and there, always met with a generic, "Thanks." My parents never questioned where my help came from, assuming I was living the high life because, as Mom once put it, you don't have your own family, so you can help your brother. Everything boiled over at Dad's 60th birthday barbecue. I flew in, spent my Friday night helping Mom with decorations, even picked up the cake when the original one was too small. When Mason showed up, fashionably late with his snazzy watch and his girlfriend Tessa, who just started a YouTube channel on minimalist living, while sporting some pricey sandals, Dad greeted him like a long-lost hero. Me? I got a nod. Dinner was the usual family chaos, until my slightly tipsy cousin Jake asked about my work. I started sharing about a security system I'd designed, but in less than a minute, Mason stole the spotlight with some big deal he'd closed. Dad was all over it, beaming, saying, "Now that's how you make a real difference." I chuckled, not out of happiness, but because it hit me, I'll never measure up. When I joked, "Guess I'm just good for paying the bills, huh?" Dad casually cut deep, saying I'd always been a drain, while Mason was the one who mattered. No dramatic gasps, just a few awkward giggles. My stomach churned, not from shock, but because finally, it was out there. I didn't make a scene, I just quietly left, packing up and heading back to Chicago without a word. The days afterward were surprisingly calm. No barrage of texts or calls, no family members playing peacemaker. I focused on myself, cutting off the financial umbilical cord, stopped the regular money transfers to Mason, canceled the family phone plan, logged out of the shared Netflix account. Just slipped out of their financial sphere, bit by bit. 3 weeks later, Mason hit me up, annoyed, asking why the money flow stopped. I stared at his text for a moment, then replied, didn't want to waste it on someone who already had everything that mattered. And just like that, I was done. I had never spiraled so quickly in my life. After that, things got kind of wild. A few days later, my mom called, but I dodged it. Then came this barrage of texts, first all worried, then trying to guilt trip me, and finally just straight up mad. Stuff like, "You're being immature," and, "We're family, Mason needs you right now." I ignored every single one. It wasn't out of spite, I was just done. What caught me off guard was how things started falling apart without me around. It began with subtle hints, little signs that all those years of me quietly supporting everything were starting to crumble now that I wasn't there to prop it up. The first call was from my Aunt Linda. Usually, she stayed out of it, just nodding along and shrugging when needed. But this time, she wasn't so neutral. After I let her call go to voicemail, she immediately called again. "Eli," she said, "your mom's in tears. She says Mason's behind on rent, and your parents are digging into their savings to help. What's going on?" I didn't reply right away, just sat there staring at the wall, wondering if it would somehow give me the green light to finally say what I'd been holding in for years. "I stopped helping," I said flatly. "Guess that means it was never really Mason's money, to begin with." There was this pause, then she sighed, "You know how they are. They don't think about consequences until they're up to their necks in them. Maybe that's the only way they'll learn, I shot back, then hung up. Things kept spiraling, or improving, if you see it that way. Without the $500 I used to send Mason every 2 weeks, he missed rent for 2 months straight. His credit card bills piled up. Tessa, who thought hard work meant editing her own thumbnails, ditched him the moment his Venmo payments bounced. She even posted a tear-filled breakup video called Leaving a Toxic Relationship, My Truth, which got more views than all her old content put together. I couldn't help but see the irony there. The real shocker was my parents' finances taking a nosedive. Growing up, Dad always bragged about how real men handle money without whining. He never mentioned that his version of handling came with a ton of quiet help from me. Like the $800 I slipped them every Christmas for house repairs, or the loan I paid off after his business crashed 5 years ago because, as Mom would say, he doesn't need the shame. Now, without me tidying up their messes, things got messy. Their internet got cut off, Mom had to cancel her book club when they couldn't host anymore. Dad's truck got repossessed because he'd been opening lines of credit in Mason's name, something no one admitted until collectors came after him. The kicker? No one came to me directly for help. They went through Linda, cousin Jake, even an old high school buddy who still lived nearby, hoping someone would knock some sense into me. Someone even tried to guilt trip me. On LinkedIn. The final straw was Mom's email, subject line, "Come home." It was short, full of words that felt ripped straight from a how to manipulate without apologizing manual. Your father isn't well. Mason's doing his best. I know you're angry, but this family needs you. We've always needed you. Please think about what really matters. I read it 5 times before drafting a reply, then deleted it. What could I say? That I had thought about what mattered for 28 years, and apparently, it had never been me? That I'd spent birthdays listening to Dad rave about Mason's potential while I scraped plates in the kitchen? That when I graduated college, they mailed me a card and signed it, but Mason's high school graduation got a whole boat rental party. I let silence speak for me. I didn't respond, and for once, they finally felt what it was like to miss me. Not the me they half listened to over dinner, not the me who paid off their debts secretly, but the one they took for granted every single day. And that silence? It grew loud. Linda texted again, "You need to see this," followed by a screenshot of a Facebook post from my mom. It was a photo of her and Dad on some porch that definitely wasn't theirs, probably borrowed for the picture. The caption read, "Family isn't about money, it's about love. Some people forget that when they walk away." The comments section was full of sympathy, from people who knew half the story or none at all, chiming in with heart emojis and, "You're such strong parents." I didn't comment, didn't like it, just stared at it feeling something I couldn't quite name, not anger, not sadness, just a cold clarity. This wasn't new. It was just the first time I didn't fix it. But what came next, no one saw it coming. 2 weeks after that Facebook post, I got a letter, not an email. So, I got this letter, not just any old text or email, but an actual letter with my name on the envelope in that neat cursive my mom used when she wanted to seem fancy. It was forwarded from an old address, the one I used in college. I opened it slowly, bracing myself for some guilt-loaded message or a passive-aggressive plea for forgiveness. But what I found was something way stranger. Inside, there was a handwritten note, about a page long, with tear stains in one corner and a coffee ring at the bottom. It was like she'd spilled her drink while figuring out what to write. Of course, it wasn't an apology, it never is, but it was something different. She wrote, "Eli, you probably won't read this, and if you do, you'll just think I'm making excuses. Maybe I am. Maybe I deserve your silence. But I need to explain, your dad's not doing well. He won't admit it, but the doctor says it's his heart. He's scared, which is why he's been acting out and saying hurtful things. Mason is struggling too, he's not as tough as you think, you've always been the one we leaned on. Not because we didn't love you, but because you were steady and reliable. Maybe that wasn't fair. Maybe we relied on you too much. But Eli, families screw up, and right now, we're falling apart. We need you. Please come home." Reading it should have cracked something open in me, made that old guilt resurface. But instead, I just felt worn out. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that sits deep in your bones from carrying too much for too long. Yet part of me wondered if it was true, about Dad, Mason, everything they hid behind their expectations of me. So, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I investigated, not by calling or asking, but by checking. Mason's LinkedIn still showed him as a freelance consultant with no activity for 6 months. The company he used to work for had quietly removed him from their site. Public records showed he'd been evicted twice. Then I checked my parents' house, it was in pre-foreclosure. Suddenly, everything made sense. The letter, the messages, the calls from long-lost relatives. But here's the kicker, they didn't know what I'd done. A week after storming out of that backyard barbecue, while they were still raving about Mason's latest gig, I'd started looking at property listings around their neighborhood. I bought a house 2 doors down, not to live in, not to rent out, just to own. It was a fixer-upper, needed a new roof, some foundation work. Paid in cash, set up renovations under a holding company linked to nothing traceable to me. Changed the mailbox, parked an old car in the driveway to make it look abandoned. They never noticed, but they would soon enough. While they scrambled to figure out why the bank stopped waiting, why bills piled up, and why Mason's safety net vanished, something else was quietly putting itself into place. Everything came to a head on a rainy Wednesday. I was working from home when an unknown number called. I ignored it. Minutes later, another call, this time, it was my mom. Her voice was shaky, desperate. "Eli," she said, "someone bought the house next door." "It's you, isn't it?" I stayed silent. "I saw your name on the permit," she said, voice cracking. "You've been here this whole time, watching us." Still, I said nothing. "I don't understand, why would you?" Finally, I answered, calm and steady, like I'd rehearsed it, because I wanted to see what happened when the drain stopped carrying the weight. She started to cry, not dramatic sobs, just quiet, broken sounds. "Eli, we're losing everything." "You already lost me," I replied, and hung up. But that wasn't the end. What followed was the fallout. Mason, who hadn't held a steady job for over a year, tried to spin a story online, claiming I cut the family off out of spite. He even posted a now-deleted tweet calling me toxic and abusive. But I didn't need to clap back with screenshots or bank statements. People remembered the cousin whose college books I bought, the uncle with the hospital bill I covered, the niece I sent a laptop to during lockdown. They reached out quietly. "We didn't know," they said. "We're sorry." I didn't need an army, just for them to finally see. Now, as foreclosure signs go up and the family group chat goes silent, I sit on the porch of my little renovated house down the street, sipping coffee and watching them scramble, not out of cruelty, but for clarity. Sometimes, the only way to show people your worth is to let the truth unfold. So here's the scoop. I thought I'd made my point by stepping back from everyone, but just when I figured things had settled, I got an unexpected envelope. This one wasn't from my mom, it was from Mason. Inside was a signed check with a note that simply said, "You win." But that's when it hit me, he still didn't get it. This wasn't about winning. I stared at that check for ages. It wasn't a big deal, barely enough to cover a month's rent in a half-decent city apartment, but the message was all wrong. It was like he thought this was some sort of game I had to win. But finally feeling seen, valued, and choosing myself wasn't about competing with anyone. That's when it clicked. None of them understood. I didn't walk away to prove a point, not for revenge or to hurt anyone, though I can't deny their pain sometimes felt like justice. I was done being their emotional ATM, their unpaid fixer, their afterthought. I was finished being the guy only noticed when something needed to be paid, covered, or fixed. Yet, they still couldn't let go of the idea that I was the problem for choosing to let go. I didn't rip up the check, nor did I frame it. I just shoved it in the back of a drawer like a relic from my past life. Then, I did something they didn't see coming. I moved on. I sold the house right next to theirs and didn't even swing by during the sale. A local investor snagged it, and I heard he's planning to tear it down and build something new. A clean slate, that felt right. I was done watching their drama unfold, done keeping score from the sidelines. I wanted to build a life where I mattered for just being me, not because I was useful or reliable. So, I started saying yes to things I used to ignore. I booked a solo trip to Iceland with nothing but a camera and an open schedule. I signed up for cooking classes because I'd had enough of microwave dinners alone. I even joined a local hiking group, despite once thinking, why waste a Saturday morning with strangers? But, surprise. Some of those strangers turned out to be better than family. A few months into my new groove, I met Dani. She was straightforward, smart, and had this knack for calling people out when they didn't see their own worth. She noticed I always introduced myself by my job title first. Over coffee, she pointed out, "You're not your job, unless you want to be." But that's a pretty tiny box to live in. We took things slowly, coffee dates, walks, late night calls turning into early morning talks. And for the first time in ages, I didn't feel like I had to jump through hoops for someone's affection. With Dani, I was just me. Nearly a year after I walked away from my family, I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. It was my dad. His voice was hoarse, slower than I remembered. He sounded smaller. "Eli, I don't know if this number still works. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I miss you. Your mom does too. Mason. Well, he's figuring things out. But I was wrong, son. I was wrong for a long time. I know saying that now might not mean much, but if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. I didn't cry or smile. I just sat there, phone in hand, listening. This man spent a lifetime measuring love by usefulness, realizing his pride's cost was silence. I didn't call back right away. I waited a week, two, then one Sunday while Danny and I folded laundry in our new place, our place, I said, I think I might write him. Danny looked up, because you want closure? No, I said. Because I'm ready. The letter I sent wasn't harsh or cold, just real. I wrote, Dad, I got your voicemail. I've spent a long time trying to understand why things were how they were. I'm not writing to make you feel guilty. I want you to know I needed to leave. I needed space to find out who I'm outside everyone's expectations. I'm not the root of your issues, I never was. I'm not coming back to fix things, but I'm open to talking on my terms if you're cool with that. Here's my number. I sent it without waiting by the phone or holding my breath. I wasn't looking for false hope. I'd built something solid, something separate. I didn't need their apology to move forward, but I'd be ready to listen if they offered one. Weeks passed, and then one evening, I got a text from an unknown number saying something like, thanks, I don't deserve this chance, but I'll take it. It was from my dad. We met up for lunch a few days later, just the two of us. There weren't any big declarations or dramatic reconciliations, just us two, each with our own set of scars, sitting down and trying to chat. He asked me about work, my life, and even about Danny, mentioning her name like it actually meant something to him, not just as a stand-in for the life he thought I should be living. At some point, he admitted, I really messed up. I nodded and said, yeah, you did. He didn't get defensive, he just nodded back and said, I'm trying to be better, even if it's too late. I told him, it's not too late, it's just not the same road anymore. For me, healing looked different, not about neat forgiveness or going back in time, but building something new, smaller, slower, and sturdier. As for Mason, we didn't talk for a bit. I heard through the grapevine that he got a steady job, something stable. No more wild startup ideas or get-rich-quick schemes, just real work. Eventually, he reached out, not asking for anything, just sending a message that went, I didn't understand what I was asking of you all those years. I do now. I'm sorry. I didn't respond immediately, but when I did, I replied, I believe you. Let's take it one step at a time. And we did. That was 2 years ago. These days, my life isn't some dramatic tale. It's not a revenge story or some perfect redemption arc, it's just my life. I go to work, come home, cook with Danny, read, laugh, and relax. I send birthday cards to my parents, and sometimes we chat on the phone, sometimes we don't. Mason and I meet up for drinks once a month, no handouts, no tension, just two brothers trying again, differently this time. The thing is, people don't always get the ending they want, but if they fight for it and choose peace over obligation, they get the ending they need. And I did. I've realized I wasn't the energy drain, I was the one who kept things standing. And now, I'm finally the reason my own life stands strong. Thanks for watching in. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more crazy real life stories happening around you.